Welcome, everyone, to this evening's Mental Health is Essential series. Tonight's topic and title of the presentation is Coping with Holiday Stress. Our presenters are Anna Polos, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Mary Faith Bond. They're both from Impact Behavioral Health Partners, and they're both gonna tell you more about themselves as I introduce both of them, so you all can take the mic.
Okay, hi, I'm Anna. I work at Impact Behavioral Health. I've been there for over 4.5 years. I am the clinical supervisor, and tonight I'm going to be presenting with Mary Faith. Mary Faith is one of the licensed clinicians at Impact Behavioral Health Partners. She brings a lot of experience and knowledge on mental health. So I don't know, Mary Faith, if you wanted to introduce yourself. I guess I just did.
Yeah, I don't need to particularly.
Thank you. So for tonight on our presentation, Mary Faith and I, our hope for this presentation is that you will learn some new coping strategies, and they'll be beneficial for you to use, not just during the holidays, but for other occasions that you might find challenging in your life. So tonight we're going to talk about several different topics. We're going to talk about coping with holiday stressors. So we're going to cover how to cope with holiday triggers, depression during the holidays, fighting loneliness, grieving, therapy tools to help you with the holidays, and physical wellness. So coping with holiday triggers, first and foremost, the most important thing is to first identify your triggers. And I know a lot of times this could be tricky because by the time we know that we are triggered by something or someone, it might be a little too late. So some things that we want to kind of cover is looking for signals. So as far as that, if you can recall and look back to times when you were stressed or triggers, what kind of things led up to that point? Were you clenching your jaw or stomach clenching, getting red in the face, getting, shaky, any sort of things that your body will signal to let you know that you're not just feeling right at that time. Other things that come up is like financial triggers. A lot of times during the holidays, we sometimes we don't have the finances to actually buy gifts for people, or we're expected to show up for certain events and pay a lot of money for it. And a lot of times that could be triggering, especially with the economy the way it is right now. The other thing too is seasonal depression. During the holidays in the winter months, that can get pretty challenging. The other thing I was going to talk about was triggers, stuff like alcohol or any sort of trauma, whether that's, becoming homeless or any other traumas that might be going on in your life. So how to cope with these things. Just first and foremost, remember, a lot of times our bodies know before we realize what's happening. So maybe in the next couple of weeks before the holiday festivities, maybe start paying attention to that, paying attention to your body sensations when you're, getting stressed and all of that, because that might help you identify, that there's something not right. Plan. So if you feel comfortable with in-person, you don't feel comfortable with in-person activities, COVID is still a thing right now. And a lot of people have, maybe forgotten and think that it's a thing of the past, but it's not. It's a real thing and it's still going on. If you don't feel comfortable, maybe celebrate at home or do virtual celebrations. If you are in recovery, remember that a lot of times this could be challenging if you're going to parties and people are drinking and you might feel those pressures. Some things to keep in mind is maybe bring your own drinks to a party. That might be helpful for you during the celebrations. Another thing you can do is just ask people for support, letting people know in your life that, hey, this might be a little challenging for me during the holidays. Another thing you could do is bring a friend or a sponsor to a party that you are attending. And if it gets overwhelming, just remember, one day at a time. If you're still feeling overwhelmed and you're at a party, step out or excuse yourself. Practice calm breathing exercises. You can go to the bathroom and do this. If you need to excuse yourself, you can step outside, like we said. A lot of times in therapy, we'll talk about different breathing techniques. And one that I find really helpful is called the 4-7-8 breathing technique. So I'm going to actually have everyone try this as we're talking, just so you could get a feel of how it could make you feel and help ground you during the holidays. So if I could have everyone sit up straight, you may or may not close your eyes depending on what you feel comfortable doing. So I'm going to have everyone breathe in through your nose for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to have you hold your breath for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm going to have you exhale the count of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I want you to pay attention and see how you feel after this. This technique I find to be pretty helpful, just because you're doing different breaths and holding it in, and it just helps ground a lot of people. You can repeat this as many times as you need, just so you feel calm. There's other breathing exercises that you can find online as well. But like I said, I find this one to be the most helpful. It's kind of discreet, where you can do it in a place where you could find comfort in some place wherever you're at. Another trigger, if you're experiencing homelessness, there's information out there on food pantries, places that provide meals, lunches, parties, and so on. At the end of our presentation, Mary Faith and I have included several different resources that might be helpful for you if you're going through any food insecurities and so on. The final thing about coping with some of the triggers is setting boundaries. Keep in mind that no is a full sentence. So people should understand that, if you don't want to be somewhere, or you don't want to do something, you don't really have to explain to them. And I always like to keep in mind, a lot of times we worry about what other people are thinking or feeling as we're setting boundaries. A lot of times I like to tell myself I'm only responsible for regulating my own emotions and not regulating others. Another thing to do is set limits, not being afraid to ask people for what you need. If your boundary is something with gifts, let's say your family or, anyone in your life has a certain budget for gifts, and you're unable to, meet that expectation, let them know, and instead maybe make something for them, offer to cook a meal or provide time like pet sitting, doing chores, or anything you feel a family member will appreciate. A gift is a gift, and just keep in mind what your limits are. So depression. I know we touched a little bit about seasonal depression, and depression still occurs around the holidays, and some people feel it year round. Just first and foremost, when you're feeling down, acknowledge it. Your feelings are valid, and it's okay not to feel okay during the holidays, and that's okay. Some things you can do is reach out to supports. If you feel isolated, there's lots of social events, communities, social websites that you can find that may be helpful. And Mary Faith and I listed a few at the end of the page. I know that a lot of times when you're triggered, there's, if you don't like to do in-person things, there's groups, there's supports on Facebook, lots of support groups. There's websites like meetup.com where they have different events that you can show up to virtually or in person, depending on what you feel comfortable doing. Be realistic during the holidays. Remember, things don't have to be perfect, but families, and remember, families change and grow. So not every year will look the same, but it's a good time when your family is transitioning and things look different, starting new traditions that may be helpful for you. And finally, seek professional help. There's lots of resources out there that can help you if you're really struggling. So loneliness. So I know when we talk about triggers, we talk about sometimes we don't know we're being triggered till we're, really angry or upset and didn't even realize we got there. That's the same with loneliness. Here are some things that might go on and maybe not realizing you're feeling lonely. So feeling tired, even when you're rested. Caring a lot about material possessions. I don't know about everybody else, but I know during COVID, I definitely was isolated and made a lot of purchases on Instagram and Facebook, just unnecessary things that I was focusing on, not even realizing I was using that as a void, just to feel better. Binge watching shows. This is not always a terrible thing. We know that, sometimes our favorite shows go on Netflix and, we want to watch the whole thing in one weekend. And that's fine if you do it occasionally. But if you're continuing to binge watch shows every single night, you might want to ask yourself why you're doing this and why you're isolating. Making mountains out of molehills, just stuff that normally doesn't bother you and it's just bothering you a lot, maybe checking yourself and asking yourself why this is happening. Social media is great. It's a great way to meet people and make different connections online. But studies have shown that if you are on social media more than 2 hours a day, that it's a great indicator that you're feeling lonely or depressed. So you might want to look at that. I don't think that cutting out social media altogether, is the best thing to do, especially if you're feeling lonely, because it's a way to connect, but maybe watching or limiting your time and finding stuff to do. The other thing too is feeling ill. A lot of times if we're lonely, our immune system becomes weakened. So just kind of paying attention to things to see where you're at. So coping with loneliness, just some things that could be beneficial. Find a new hobby. Let's say you want to do something at home, maybe start scrapbooking, knitting, maybe Google search some things that you wanted to try if it's something that you want to do in person. Walking. Walking is one of my favorite things. They have studies show that a lot of times, even just stepping out and going for a 5-minute walk improves your mood. Even when you're on that walk, there's people that you can meet, neighbors with dogs and stuff, and, making connections with others could help alleviate some of those feelings that you're having. Decorating your home. This might brighten things up for you in your life. And if you don't have the finances to do it, things like painting a wall, maybe getting some throw pillows, moving your furniture around, anything to make you feel good and uplift your spirits. Find a local community. There's so many different resources where you can volunteer, especially in Evanston and the city of Chicago. There's groups that you can join, hiking groups, biking groups. There's a lot of virtual groups. My favorite thing to tell people is make a place your place. So what I mean by this is kind of set a schedule for yourself. If you decide that on Mondays at 8 a.m., I'm going to go to the local coffee shop, make it a regular thing and do it every Monday. This way, people kind of get to know you. You get to know the staff there. You get to know the people that go in during that time. And that could help with loneliness. There's other things too, going to the library, bookstore. If you like going to the gym, go to the gym, maybe take a class during the same time and get to know people. Things like that can help improve your mood during the holidays. So I am going to pass it over to Mary Faith.
Hello, everybody. I am going to work on sharing my own screen. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, now I can't see anything. All right. Can we all see this?
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you so much. Okay. So I wanted to start with talking about managing expectations, because it has been my experience that a lot of our frustrations and unhappiness come from unmet expectations or missed expectations. So spending some time recognizing like where our expectations come from, and we came up with 3 different kind of main areas. The first one being our imagination. So that's kind of like things that we've seen maybe in movies before, or through technology, like through media. So that ideal, like you've seen a Christmas movie and how they do things, and then you put that on yourself, like that's how it's supposed to be. But then you look at your own situation and it's not, maybe not like that at all, or to some extent. So just keeping in mind that managing your expectations. So the other, another way that we compare ourselves to other people would be just like interpersonally, like keeping up with the Joneses. And then the final way would be how we compare ourselves to the past. So, you know, we think of how Christmases or holidays have gone in years previous and thinking that we need to make it exactly like mom always had it, or something like that. So it's a human nature kind of thing to compare ourselves to the past or to compare ourselves to other people. So those things are going to automatically come up. And I just wanted to address that, because when it automatically comes up, you can just give yourself a little grace and recognize like, oh, I'm just doing that thing, or I'm saying that I should be meeting this expectation. But, you know, just realizing what could be more realistic for you, your scenario, or this year even. So I actually found, let me see, a skill. Can we still all see the pages that I'm sharing? Okay, so this is a worksheet that I found that I'm going to put in the chat in a little bit. And what it does is give you a moment, if you're willing, to think about your own expectations. So to just kind of take a look at it. What are you expecting of yourself this holiday season? Does it have to do with making food or buying gifts, seeing people, or being the host? And then I really like this because it asks you to focus on if any of these activities in the past have caused you disappointment or frustration. And so just keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind whether or not those are things that you need to continue to do, or whether there are augmentations that can be done so that you're less stressed. Another important part would be, what are you expecting of other people during the holidays? Will you only be satisfied if people celebrate with you or come to your house? Do they have to appreciate their gift? Do they have to be giving you gifts? So there are a lot of things assumptions that we make around the holidays just based on our own ideas of how things are supposed to be. But that's not always how other people feel. So really just kind of like opening up lines of communication. So setting those expectations with other people. Another part of this is really just looking at like taking time to be reflective and thinking about what you can cut out, changes that can be made, focusing on the parts that you enjoy, and then things that you can do less of. So if you are feeling that it's necessary, you're allowed to say, maybe not this year. You know, we don't have to do that big cookie making this year. If you enjoy it, then please absolutely do it. But if it's more stress than it's worth, then you're allowed to make the call, you know, make a different choice this year. And you can always make a different choice next year too. So now, sorry, I'm gonna go back to our presentation. Cognitive distortions are a part of cognitive behavioral therapy, and they're basically like our irrational thoughts, and they're automatic and they're unconscious. And there's something, so it's something that we all do that not everybody knows about. So I just wanted to bring a little attention to them, educate a little bit, and I'm going to pull up, sorry, my Word document. We can all see my Word document. I haven't used Zoom in so long, guys, I'm sorry. So here we have just kind of a list of cognitive distortions that I'm going to talk through. So the first one is dichotomous thinking, which is also kind of known as all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking. And this is, you know, considering only those extremes. So the example there is I am a complete failure. And it kind of, if it's black and white, then you're not leaving any room for the gray. Kind of related to overgeneralization in a way. And overgeneralization is a single instance is viewed as indicative of a broader class.
I'm sorry, Mary, are you showing another document instead of your slides right now?
I am. Can we not see the Word document?
I don't. I just see the slide with managing expectations and recognizing cognitive distortions.
Thank you. Give me just a second. I really appreciate you speaking up because I'm a visual. Can we see it now?
Yes, I see a word.
Okay, good. Because I'm very much a visual person. So if I were just talking at you guys and you couldn't see this, this would be difficult. So thank you very much for that. So we went over dichotomous thinking. So that's only considering the extremes. And then sometimes we engage in overgeneralization. So that could be like, if one person thinks that I'm lazy, then everyone must feel that way. So a single instance is viewed as indicative of a broader class, or like I wasn't invited to the party, so I might not be invited to other parties. And both of these represent, or like one thing you might hear in them is that kind of absolutist language of always or never. Like I'm always screwing up, or something bad always happens to me. Or the never end is like I never get things right, or I can never just be happy. If any of those things sound familiar, they're pretty common things that people could think based on some of these automatic cognitive distortions that we have. But it's typically not the case, right? That always or never stuff. Like even if it's most of the time, it's not always. So kind of catching yourself or maybe other people and just allowing grace. And the next one is selective abstraction. So that's attending to certain, usually negative aspects of a situation at the cost of other aspects. So that's like discounting the positive or only honing in on the things that have gone wrong. So the example there is one person was disinterested while I was speaking rather than focusing on the other people who were. Maybe somebody was super engaged and got a lot from it, but you're just focusing on that one person who was maybe sitting there like this or, you know, looking at their phone or whatever. So the next two are included in jumping to conclusions. So the first one would be mind reading. So that's when attitudes and actions of other people are assumed without evidence. And that could sound like basically assuming that you know what someone thinks. So like, since they didn't call, they must be angry with me. So like taking a scenario and then assigning what that person, like assigning intent to somebody else. And the truth is that you are not in their mind. While you might have a good idea, it's not exactly fair to jump to the conclusion and try to engage in mind reading. Related to that is fortune telling. So it's a similar thing, but instead of with a person, with just events. So we're trying to predict the future based on assumptions rather than evidence. So the example there, she's going to ruin the whole thing. Fortune telling feels like it might come up a good amount around the holidays, because the holidays involve maybe traditions or things that we do over and over again, meetings we do over and over again. So this idea of expecting someone to act a certain way, I think is fair and healthy to an extent, like trying to predict what Aunt Jean is gonna say this year, you know, like, I don't know if you have those kind of people in your life where, you know, something might come up, they might say something that triggers you. So keeping in mind, like maybe having a plan for that, but also not letting the idea of that like ruin the entire day or the holiday. So that's my thoughts on fortune telling. Personalizing is next. So that's attributing any like other people's actions to you. Like, so the example there is he walked away because he didn't want to see me. You know, there are a lot of examples with this, but the idea that somebody did something because of you, when really, if we open up to context, there could be not a million, but, you know, like tons of reasons why a person engages in something that has maybe something to do with you, but maybe nothing to do with you at all. So just kind of keeping in check, like, did I just try to, you know, establish that person did something because of me, and just opening up, recognizing context. Should statements, I also think are really important around the holidays due to tradition. So should, like those absolute imperatives that we have for ourselves or for others. So they should be nicer to me. We should be meeting, so-and-so knows that she should be bringing this dish. So when it kind of also ties back to the expectations. So just keeping in mind shoulds, like maybe there are shoulds, but there are no hard and fast rules really for anything. You might have preferences, we might have preferences, but really those shoulds and have tos are kind of open for debate. And then finally, with cognitive distortions is catastrophizing. So anticipating extremely negative consequences without evidence. Anna mentioned earlier, making a mountain out of a molehill. That's often how this cognitive distortion is described. But I have to smile at the example because I have definitely, I think we've all done this. But, you know, my spouse hasn't called, they might be dead. So just like jumping to the automatic worst possible outcome that there could be, it's absolutely natural. But if you catch yourself doing it, you can maybe stop a not so pleasant spiral. It's like, okay. The thing with cognitive distortions is like facts, like what's the evidence versus what are your thoughts? That's something that I like to ask people a lot. So if you're having a lot of thoughts, you can just kind of check in with yourself and say, are these thoughts, or like, are they based in facts? Are they based in evidence that I have and can share and somebody else would agree? So just something to keep in mind. I am going to try to switch back to the other share. Okay. Next, I thought it would be important to talk about grieving and loss. This is obviously not specifically a grieving and loss training, but around, you know, the holidays are a time when grief can be exacerbated. You know, we're thinking about the people we love, the people we appreciate, and really no matter what stage of grief you're in, the holidays are going to be a reminder of that person. So if you haven't lost anyone recently, You may have lost someone in the past, and you will certainly lose someone in the future. So if this doesn't apply to you, it doesn't feel like it applies to you directly immediately, I apologize, but I hope that there's at least one person that maybe this could apply to. So, and really, in our culture, we don't talk about grief enough. So like, I feel like it needs to start being normalized, like mental health is, like there's a bigger push to normalize mental health. I think grief needs to be more of a discussion we have because it's something we all experience. So identifying your grief. You want to be, well, you could be looking for signs of grief, and that could look like sadness or depression. It could look like decreased energy. It's actually kind of funny because when Anna was talking about loneliness, I was like, oh, it kind of sounds like grief. So for all of this, just keeping in mind warning signs, reaching out to supports if you recognize these things. So yeah, decreased energy. It could look like anger or guilt, so lashing out, maybe being more irritable. And it could also look like sleep or appetite changes. There are different kinds of loss when it comes to grief. There is obviously the physical loss of the person, but then there's also symbolic losses, like feeling a loss of control maybe, or a loss of certainty in the world, the loss of companionship, or maybe struggles with faith. And then obviously the loss of, the dreams or the future hopes that you had with and for that person. It could also involve role changes, like every person in our circle has a role that they play and fill. And when that person leaves, then what do we do with that? Does somebody else fill it? Do we just allow space for it? But so there's going to be changes in social interactions and a possible loss of income, which can tie, as Anna was talking about, to those financial triggers. So planning for family traditions. You want to monitor your own feelings about what's necessary to do. You want to think about your plan before it arises, and then obviously be in communication with your friends and your family. So back to expectations, what you expect from yourself and others, what they expect from you. Open communication. You want to make sure you give yourself permission to change plans depending on how you feel. So the day of, you might feel different, and that's okay, because grief doesn't look the same day to day. And no matter where you are in the grieving process, it's not always going to be linear. So just giving yourself permission and showing yourself grace if changes are needed. You might feel guilt. Guilt about enjoying the holidays, maybe without the person, is a possibility. So give yourself permission to enjoy the holidays. New traditions and memorializing your loved one can be opportunities to heal. And then if children are involved, it is important, I believe, for the way the child is raised, to continue traditions, to not disrupt too much, I think is the typical way that people think about it. And then rituals are a really beautiful thing that, it's funny because I was struggling to come up with examples for rituals because like I said, as a society, we don't talk about grief. So we don't necessarily even do a lot of rituals. I don't know about your own families. Let me only speak for myself. But a ritual for a loss, for a loved one, could be, go around the table and say something, or they can be mentioned in part of the prayer, or maybe you have an altar or an empty chair set up. But whatever a ritual would look like for you, however you feel like you can honor that person, however you think they might want to be honored. I don't have any great ideas. Just recognize that through processing and, talking about the loved one, not necessarily just like putting it in a box and putting it away, not bringing them up. You honor them, and it's respectful. And I think it's the respect that they deserve. So thank you for that. And then finally, going to talk a little bit about physical wellness. I found a really good article from the New York Times, and it came with a video. I don't know if you guys saw any of the stuff on the news about the New York Times, but I didn't pay for the video, but I might try to show you guys, but there's like an ad. Anyway, so physical wellness. Obviously, we know that if you have a regular exercise routine, that's fantastic. That can help guard against, obviously, physical issues, but also mental issues. So if you have one, fantastic. But in this article, it said that you could exercise like as needed, like Advil. And I really liked that because that's kind of how I do it, like in fits and starts. Just kind of recognizing that I need it and then doing it. So, ooh, somebody just came in, sorry. So I think I'm going to try to show you guys this video, but the holidays are difficult because it's got like a mix of this stressful rush, go, go, go. And then also like it's colder outside. And so we become more sedentary. So this back and forth, it's just important to recognize what your body needs. So if, for instance, you're traveling or you're with family, like all crowded into a house. So if you like just feel constricted, if you feel tight or feel tense, then this article suggested joy movement. And I kind of wish I had enough room, but I'm kind of glad I don't. But it's basically like just kind of big, expansive, bouncy, stretchy movement. So like, we're big and we're swaying and we're bouncing. And I'm actually gonna try to find this for you guys now because I just feel silly. Let's see. Oh no, now I can't. Well, we're gonna have to let that be. But yeah, you can make yourself big and you don't have to do anything really, I'm not saying go run a mile or you have to go do sprints out in the street, but just a little bouncing and flowing and moving can change your mood, can release that constricted, tight feeling that you have. Kind of alternatively, another idea with counterbalancing would be if you feel like everything is go, 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 and you're really rushed and there's a lot going on and you just need to calm, then things like yoga or Tai Chi, where you focus on slow, calm movements or slow breaths. So really just tuning into what your body needs and then doing it for your body and not being hard on yourself if you do or don't, I think. I will say one other thing that I liked about the article. It talked about walking. You can go walking with a friend or a foe. So you can go walking with a friend. That sounds nice and social, right? But if you are struggling with someone, stressed about your interactions with somebody, or you might have to have a difficult boundary conversation. So we talked about boundaries earlier. If you are walking side by side with someone, it is much less confrontational. It opens up, you're walking and you're moving. So it's, you're opening up new ways of thinking and communicating. And because you're not facing one another, you can, people kind of speak more honestly. And it's just it's a good situation for having difficult conversations. That's my piece. That's what I have. I'm going to, here's our resource page. I'm going to put up that link in the chat, and then I think we're going to open it up for questions. If anybody has any thoughts or questions.
If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat box.
There has to be some questions.
I don't have a direct question, but maybe I can start off on conversation just by saying thank you guys both so much for this presentation. It's been extremely helpful and a lot of information that I had not considered. I won't say like didn't know, because you guys all gave wonderful examples of real life things that we all know and experience. So thank you for putting it into a perspective I had not considered before and for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's not anything groundbreaking, but those nice little reminders. Thank you.
Anyone else? Also, just so you know, this presentation will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, the Evanston Public Library YouTube channel, probably by tomorrow. Any more questions? Would you all be sharing your resources with the group, your slides, or?
We can actually go through them. I can pull up and share the slide on here. I can't seem to pull it up. I don't know, Mary Faith, if you can pull it up on your end.
Or you can send it to me and I have everyone's email and I can send it out to everyone.
Okay. A lot of the stuff that we did put on the resource page was just a lot of places people can go to if they have food insecurities. We also put down emergency services. So everyone, if they remember services, 311. A lot of times if you need some housing stability or just any sort of resources, 311 is a great place to call because they can actually direct you to the proper person. And then 988, if you are having thoughts of harming yourself, definitely 988 would be a great number to call. We also included AA meetings. We know that you can find online AA meetings, and the 800 number that we posted is real. They can kind of find places in your area or help you navigate that. I know during the holidays that it could be very hard for people that are struggling or, with sobriety, that sort of thing. I did put down meetup.com. If you go online, it's a great place to find social groups. And I think we mentioned it during our presentation. What's on there is you can put any sort of activity you enjoy and something will pop up, whether it's a virtual group or an in-person group. And the great thing about that is there's no pressure to show up if you change your mind and want to do other things, but you can also create your own group. So if you don't find something on there that seems appealing to you, that can help out. We didn't put down, Facebook has a lot of support groups, which could be helpful as well.
Great. Before we close the presentation, I'm just going to ask if anyone has any further comments or questions before we end the presentation. I want to thank you both for this evening's talk. Some of the comments, well, one of the comments in the chat box gave praise to your presentation. It's very timely, of course, for this time of year, and I want to thank everyone, both of you, for presenting this evening. Hopefully, we will have you back. in the coming year for another presentation. And thank you again on behalf of the library. Okay. If there are no further questions, again, thank you both, and everyone have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you.